education in the visual arts, you may be wondering of what you're going to expect. What follows is 10 points of what I think will really be valuable for you. My name is Ian Walsh. I've been teaching art now for 24 years. I want to share what I've learned with you. Now, one of the basic things, I suppose, when you go to art college is that you're going to meet new people, a variety of different types of people. Now, I think this is a really beneficial thing as an art student, because number one, you're going to you will speak to people with a diverse range of ideas and interests, be it sculpture, ceramics, painting, abstraction, conceptual art, performance art. All of these different people of varied ages, some older, some more mature, some younger, will have different ideas. They will obviously communicate their ideas, they will show them in their work, and it's a great way, I think, to get inspiration, to be inspired, and just to look at that eclectic range of people. Our college is full of interesting characters, and you'll be able to gain, I feel, an awful lot through meeting and talking and being in the company of different types of people who have the same interest as you. That is learning about art, learning about fine art, be it graphics, be it fashion, be it conceptual art, and obviously taking those ideas forward over your course of study, be it foundation, degree level, undergraduate or postgraduate level. Meeting new people at all of these different levels can provide you with a lot of inspiration, and it's key, really, and fundamental to obviously developing your ideas when you go thinking of an education in the arts. Now, another key ingredient when you go to art school is coming into contact with and looking at new styles of art that you may not be aware of. Okay, and I really do think, again, this is an incredibly valuable thing to develop in terms of your education, where you can be inspired by what people are doing around you. So looking at new styles of art and coming into contact with people who are producing more experimental work, people who have a high level of skill, people who may be a little bit further on than you, producing their end of year shows, can really give you an insight on how to develop your own practice. And obviously this is a key way of you developing your own individual work as you progress through art school. So obviously I would say take advantage of that, have a look at what's going on around you, visit the painting studios, visit the sculpture studios, go to the ceramics, look at the animators, even look at the people who are producing holographic work. There's a vast array of eclectic ideas and styles of art that are being produced in art schools, and you really should take advantage of it. And it's one way for you to make progress as an individual when you're a student and developing your ideas at that sort of early stage. So key to your own development is coming into contact with new styles of art and not being pigeonholed and narrow in your viewpoint of the type of work that you want to create. I obviously produced a wide variety of different types of work when I was an art student. I produced sculpture, I learned about carving, I learned about welding, I learned about ceramics and etching. I attended animation lectures and spoke to a wide variety of different people, and it's all really beneficial. And you'll think about this as you progress and become more mature. You will think back on those days when you were an art student and the type of things that you came into contact with, because it's a very rich and rewarding place to be, I think, when you're at art school. Now, for me personally, when I was at art school, one of the most enjoyable aspects of it was visiting lecturers, and it really does give you an idea of how professional artists operate in the art world. Obviously, if you as an amateur or as an art student, you will really not have developed that type of understanding at that level. So speaking to, visiting artists, having tutorials with them, attending their lectures, I found was one of the most valuable aspects of being an art student at art college. And I do remember attending lectures by many varied artists. One of them was Paul Mason, the late Paul Mason, who was a sculptor, and he showed us some very, very interesting examples of sculpture, and he obviously showed us a wide variety of work that he produced in the Royal College of Art as he was developing as a student coming out of college, the work he created in his first commissions, and it really does give you an insight into the type of artwork that you can create as an artist, as a fine artist or a sculptor or a painter in particular. It's very inspirational, it can give you ideas, it gives you something to work towards as a postgraduate student, or somebody who doesn't maybe have a clear idea of where they're going. It's inspirational, and I found it was extremely rewarding, especially when you have your own conversations with artists who are professional, who are successful, and who are esteemed in their own right. One of the key things I found was speaking to artists and getting their insight on how to develop my own work, or my own working practices, and maybe making further progress with certain types of things I was doing in the studio as an art student. So do take advantage of this when you're in college, and you're offered these opportunities to attend lectures with people, to speak to artists, and to have tutorials with them. It's extremely important, and it's very, very beneficial, and it's one of the key things I feel to attending art school, because you will get this access to professional, successful artists who are working in the art scene at the moment in different varieties of the media and disciplines. So do take advantage of it. Attended art school, one of my key memories of it was mounting exhibitions, both in my second year and my third year and my final degree show, and it was one of the really valuable experiences of being in art school, I found. And probably in my second year I created what was called then gallery practice, where we would create 2 or 3 larger pieces of work with accompanying preliminary work around it. And it was a really beneficial experience, I found, because you could work in a gallery environment, you could organise your work and in that type of space. You would have to mount it, place it on the wall, obviously in that type of environment, such as a professional artist, and learn the skill of developing your own exhibition. I was an art student who hadn't done that before. Maybe somebody who hasn't shown their work before, this is extremely important. So I found that skill, particularly in my second year as a degree student, extremely valuable. And one of the key things I remember from actually doing it was the feedback that you get once you'd finished the exhibition, because we would ask the lecturers to come in and to speak to us about the work, and you would also have your fellow students coming in and looking at it and giving you a critique on how well you've produced, or just discussing the ideas basically that you had produced when you're in college. And you will find that this feedback, or the reaction you get to your own work, is very beneficial. Okay, and it's a key ingredient for you to making success when you progress into your third and final year of study as a degree level student. So my suggestion here is to take advantage of that and to just enjoy it, really, because mounting an exhibition for the first time is a key thing, really. So do take that into consideration and try your best when you're doing it. Now, following on from gallery practice is the experience of developing your degree show at the end of your course in art school. Now, I also found this an incredibly rewarding part of being an art student, and it really is the pinnacle of the 3 years of study when you produce your final degree. So it's very important, and in some ways you will obviously get feedback from people, and you will receive your final assessment from it. So it is important. But there are a number of other things that you can gain from this experience, I found. One is, again, feedback from people. People will come in and view the degree shows. You can even sell your own work. You will obviously have a catalogue where you are, where you can put a statement next to your work. You could be featured in art magazines. People can buy your work. Visiting lecturers will come to see your work. So it is very, very high profile, and it's important that you do show your work, your final work, at the end of those 3 years to the best of your advantage. Again, I found this very exciting. I found it very rewarding, and the quality of the work that I produce here will be your best work, and you will want to showcase it. So for me personally, it was a year of work, practical work coming together, and ideas. The maturity of that work comes together at that point, and really you do get a lot from it. It's very rewarding. You look back at it, you'll never forget about it, and it's a very, very positive experience. Even if you don't get the grade you want, I find that it's extremely rewarding in other ways. You'll get people's opinion. You get an awful lot, I find, of positive feedback about your work. People making comments about it, people even buying it. I sold 2 pieces of my degree show to a sculpture park. It was on public display for many years. It was extremely rewarding. It was the first work that I really sold as an art student. So there's a buzz around it. So, you know, it's a positive experience, and it's another one of those key things when you think about, if you're thinking about attending art school, that comes into play. So do consider that. Now, as an art student, one of the key things that you'll experience when you're at art school is having access to a studio space. When you're in your first year, it'll be a pretty small space, admittedly, but when you obviously progress into your second and third years of art school at degree level, for example, or postgraduate degree, you will have a more substantial studio space to work with. And I think this is one of the more enjoyable aspects of being in art school, is having that access to a studio space and the facilities that come with it. I remember obviously a studio space as an art student myself, where I obviously built up a collection of work, and it's great to obviously showcase your work, to have it around you, and you can feed off it, you can develop it, you can obviously place it on the walls. If you're a painter or if you're a sculptor, you can place it in certain positions, and this creates a really interesting artistic environment where you can obviously showcase your work and develop your ideas. Another part of your studio space is obviously the banter and discussions you will have with your fellow art students and your lecturers when they come in, and also the technicians that are on hand to assist you in art school, because you will get an awful lot of feedback about your work, because obviously you will not be working in isolation. You'll have those people around you. People feed off each other, they speak to each other, there's banter, and you will gain an awful lot through the conversations, to listening to people, to having conversations with people in the studio environment. It's one of, again, like visiting artists, it's one of the key things that you'll remember of your experience at art school. I did it for 6 years, is being in that studio environment, surrounded by other like-minded artistic students who can give you feedback, who you can have a conversation with, you can look at their work, even if it's just a passing glance. You'll see something that can inspire you, that can give you inspiration, or just enable you to build your knowledge about what's going on around you. The studio space is extremely important. It's your hub, really, of where you develop your work, where you bring things in, where you can draw, where you can place work, where you can take a step back, go back and forth from things and look at things, maybe leave things for a couple of months, then go back to them if they're not quite right. there's an awful lot of things that go on in the studio, from the banter, through the tutorials, through the presentation of your work, through the general combination of what's going on in the space. So the studio environment, be aware of it, enjoy it. It's an extremely important part of the process of being an art student at art school, and I found it in particular very, very rewarding, and I do remember even 30 years later as an art teacher. Okay, now one of the key things that you will learn when you're in art school is that of developing an artistic language, wherever it will be, painting, drawing, sculpture. When you leave art school, you will need to have some sort of identity as an artist or a practicing artist when you're leaving. And the importance of artistic language, of having something that you can fall back on and work on, I feel is really important, really. I always remember people were wondering, what is it we're actually learning at art school? What are you actually doing? And there was this conversation going on at the time. What is art? And for sculptors in particular, it was form in space. And there was conceptual artists, there were performing artists who were quite different. And they were wondering, what is that artistic language? What is your identity that you develop when you're in art school? So that artistic language is important. I always remember one of the main lecturers saying that he was speaking to a student in the sculpture studio, and they didn't know what an anvil was. And he thought, if you don't know what an anvil is, what are we actually teaching people? And he was very, very forthright in his views that an artistic language in sculpture, for example, was form in space. And when he was tackled on that subject, I was remembering Bob Scriven, he spoke about it very forcefully. He said, well, what is it then? You give me the alternative answer. It's form in space. It's having that language when you leave art school, that you have it, that you can take it with you, you develop it as an individual artist, and it's important. And that language, your identity, you develop it as you will move through art school, will give you that obviously that language as you progress through the artistic language. Now, many people, when they decide to have an art education at art school, do attend art school in different cities and different parts of their country. So it's quite an experience, this. So do think about the type of environment that you want to be a part of for 3 years or 4 years. And just think about how that's going to affect you as an art student. I know for where I studied in Liverpool, there was a vast amount of architectural influences. There's a great gallery scene and local artistic community in that space. So it's an important aspect of being in art school is your immediate environment and your wider local environment or city environment that you will come into contact as an art student. I mean, again, you can get inspiration from the city environment, from the wider environment, maybe outside, the countryside or the landscape or the coastal areas. It can always give you, for example, many ideas to feed off as an art student. So your environment, or being aware of visiting a new city or a new art school or a new environment, is a key ingredient when you're considering where you want to go, where you want to study, or the type of work that you want to create when you're in art school, because you will gain a lot from how you are affected from your surroundings. So to bear that in mind, your environment and the way it affects you as you're working as an artist. Things at the end of an art course at art school is postgraduate study, and this can obviously lead on to and progress on to a number of different things. For example, master level or advanced level study as when you graduate as an undergraduate in your degree, or you may wish to decide to become something else. You may wish to work in galleries, or be going to teaching, for example, or become a practicing artist. Postgraduate study is a really good way of developing those, developing your knowledge and your qualifications and taking it to a further level when you're leaving into the wider community and the wider world. So consider it, it's important. It's not a sudden cut-off point, because as artists, obviously, we're not always commercially viable individuals when we leave art school. There are many different opportunities in the arts these days. So obviously take advantage, research what's going on around you, have a look at the courses, be prepared to travel. I mean, knowing where I am in the UK, I went to London and I worked there, I came into contact, had my own studio, and it was rewarding. And obviously postgraduate level qualifications take you on that journey after art school, and you can obviously earn your living through being involved in them and completing them. So art school gives you those advantages to move on and develop postgraduate study when you finish graduating art school. Overall, I hope this has been informative for you, and it's my sort of feedback really from my enjoyable time at art school. I spent 6 years studying as an art student back in the 90s. I enjoyed it. It was extremely rewarding. It's been, for me, it's given me a lifelong learning journey as an artist, and it's given me a lot of rewards in my life, and I do recommend it for people who are considering it.